control. Gravity is all that I know. She's over me. She's over me. She caught me with her hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, welcome to the Paranormal Portal on Night Terrors. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you for being here. Hope you've had a brilliant weekend. Mine's been pretty good, I think. We've had a bunch of great shows. Don and I had a lot of fun last night. Thank you to all of you who participated by calling in and being a part of it. It was just fun and exciting to hear from all of you, and even got a couple of podcasts lined up because of it, so it's a good thing. The phones will be open throughout the duration of the show tonight. The number to call is 720-923-0500. Again, 720-923-0500. Those are the numbers to fun. Call me if you got something to say about what we're talking about, something I'm talking about, or if you got an experience of your own. That's perfectly fine. It's great to hear from everybody. Thanks, Ethan. I'm kicking all I can, so appreciate that. And good to see all y'all in chat. Thank you so much for coming in. Hope you all are holding it together back at the home fronts where you all are. I don't know. It's been normal for me, but again, I'm kind of a shut-in anyway, so I don't go anywhere. You can always find me here in the studio putzing away at something. So, but I guess that's all I got on the front end. I hope you're ready because it's time for bed. All right, there we are. I'm back. Sorry, I forgot to hit the scene. Yeah, you'd swear I'd never done this before. Sometimes it's like rookie night. I swear to God, I have these, I have these mini aneurysms or strokes or something. It's like, wait a minute, what am I doing here? Who am I? What's my motivation? It's crazy. I've done this show thousands of times, and still, I can't sometimes remember to change a scene. Guess I'm getting up there. So anyway, welcome to the show. The Night Terrors, of course, are our shorter format of the Paranormal Portal. Wednesday, Friday, Saturdays are the 2-hour shows, and every other day is the Night Terrors. Now, I was thinking of scaling back on the Night Terrors and cutting out a few nights a week just because, for sanity and for getting things done. But in light of the situation we're all in, I'm continuing that because, I want to help in whatever way I can, and certainly doing these shows is what I can give to you all to try to help you through this madness and this nightmare we're all in. So I hope that it's well received. I hope you guys enjoyed that. But, when we, just so you know, when we get through it, I'm probably going to start taking a couple nights off a week just because it'll allow me to get more done and try to build for future visions of these shows, both the podcast and the weekly shows here on YouTube. So, and TFR as well, TFR Live, which is where we are. Show me some love. Yeah, thank you, Duke. Gotta have some love. Hit the like button if you would, please. That goes a long way in helping our YouTube videos get recommended to other people. So the more likes or interactions, and if you have comments, leave comments. That helps a bunch too, because all of those things register as numeric values with the algorithm and encourage the algorithm to spit us out for more people. So that would help a bunch. Thank you. Keep that pretty face showing up. Well, how you do go on. I'll keep coming here if you guys keep showing up. How's that for a deal? Julian Rousel. Good to see you, Julian. Thank you. I'm not familiar with your name, but thanks for stopping in. That's a new one. I that's the beauty of this, is turning on the show and seeing new faces and stuff. That to me is exciting because it's a demonstration that people are seeing us and hearing about the show. So excellent. And hello to all of our regulars. Of course, I love you guys. I love you all a long time. You know that, though. If you don't know that, then you haven't been paying attention, because I tell you guys I love you all the time. So I got some ghost stories pulled up. I hope you're ready to be entertained, because I'm going to give it my all to keep you entertained throughout the duration of the experience tonight. So first story off the bat has to do with Ouija boards, and it's coming out of the state of Washington. Now, Ouija boards are a funny thing. For the regulars, this is me doing the same thing I do every time I talk about Ouija boards. But I feel like, given the fact that new people are coming into the show all the time, I feel it's okay to re-explain a little bit. I don't believe the hype that these things are negative or evil, just because they are spirit communication boards. I think for the most part, they are largely harmless. I think that you can have actual contact with them, but I think they can become dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. I think that anytime you're using one, you are using yourself as a blind channel to some entity that you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Talking to, you don't know who you're talking. You may be calling for Grandpa, but you might be getting, Zaxil from the fifth plane of hell. You don't know. So there are ways and methods to, of course, prepare yourself and your location for a positive experience with the board. And if you don't know how to do that, but you want to play with these things, then definitely look into it. It's all about, preparing a space first. Any practitioner of any kind of ritualistic practice, whether it's, and by ritualistic, it can mean mainstream religion too. I mean, the churches are blessed. They are, blessed, and that's that's all sanctified. I don't know if that's the right word, but that's the one that's coming to my head. But, so it's not just, I'm not just speaking of esoteric or occult practices. I'm speaking of all practices. Those spaces are consecrated in a way, and they are charged to a certain energy, and that's where people worship. Well, I'm not saying a Ouija board is worship, but it is a contact with another realm of existence, or it's an attempt at that, at least. So whenever you're going to use one, it's not just a matter of whipping out turning off the TV and putting it on the on the table in the living room and let's have some fun talking to ghosts. I think they can be used responsibly, but I don't think most people know what that means. And so I would just encourage you all, if you want to play with these things, to learn about that kind of stuff and learn the fact that when you're opening a session, you have to learn how to close that session, because gliding a piece of plastic over the words goodbye is not actually closing much anything. I don't believe that is a proper closure or end to any practice like this. So you have to learn how to close it. And it can be done many ways. And I'm going to throw out a few ways now. The Lord's Prayer, and, with the intention of that being sealed by, the divine, or holy water, or, sage and asking blessings, and, whatever practice that you utilize yourself. So that's my nutshell about the Ouija board. I always like to throw that out there, because a lot of people are like, Ouija boards, those are from the devil. And it's like, well, no, they're just a piece of paper with letters on it. People's intent is to contact a spirit, and sometimes it works. But sometimes also, even rarer still, there's negative things that you contact instead. Whenever you go, is there anybody out there that wants to talk to you? Well, you got to be prepared for what might answer. And so that's why I say prepare your space, because that should keep negative energies away. So that's my nutshell about it. I won't go into any more detail, but let me get to this story. So this is my first post. It details my first contact with spirits, both kind and evil. It all started last August. My brother had just gone off to college, and I had an hour and a half after school to myself, as my mom was still at work. My friend had just got a Ouija board, and me, still naive to the horror of the thing, decided that playing the game would be a fun way to spend my alone time. Oh, nice. That Friday, I invited him over. He set up the board, and we lit a few candles, and he told me that at any cost, I wasn't to break the circle until the spirit said goodbye. Well, I jokingly agreed as I was skeptical of the board's powers. He started off by asking, is there anyone present in the room? The shot glass that seemed to have appeared on the board without my seeing went to the yes. My friend continued to question the spirit, which seemed more than happy to answer. My first few experiences were all like that one, friendly spirits, and what at the time I still thought was a bit of fun. Well, after a few weeks of using the board, I started to feel connected with it. I started to question my friend's right to own it, and felt like it belonged to me. I asked my friend if we could keep the board at my house, as it would save him bringing it over every day, or at least that's the reason I gave him. Well, he made me promise I'd never use the board alone before he'd agreed to pass it to me. At that time, my promise meant very little, but to this day, I haven't used the board alone. On the 23rd of September, my friend came over for what was to be the last time. He set up the board, and some candles were lit, and placed the shot glass that he had concealed in his coat pocket onto the board, but something was different. I can't quite explain it, but things seemed more real and darker than what I had experienced before. The first and last spirit we met that night was called Paul. We asked his age, and he answered 41. We asked where he was, and he replied, hell. We asked why, and that was when he turned. The glass started moving more rapidly and aggressively, and we asked if we could leave, and he replied no. We asked again and got no reply. The lights went out in my room, the door slammed shut, and then silence. The room turned cold, and nothing but a faint tap of my bedroom window could be heard. I glanced over at the closed curtains and then at my friend, and he was white in the face. Our eyes met, and I gestured to him to ask the spirit to stop. He did so in a somewhat trembling voice, and the spirit answered yes. Well, I don't remember what much after that. My friend tells me I passed out and broke the circle, but I'm not so sure. When I woke up, I felt empty and alone. It's been a year and a bit now, and I will never forget that night. I'll never forget the memories left with me that I did not experience myself. Well, there you have it. That would be what I would chalk up to being not prepared. And I'm not laughing because it's not because it's hilarious, but I mean, literally, this is the problem with these things. They're marketed to age 8 and up on the box, and there's no way in hell your 8-year-old should be summoning spirits. But that's maybe just me. Maybe I'm a little old fashioned that way, but don't let the kids summon ghosts. I don't think that's probably a good idea. Even if they do know what they're doing. All right, so let's go on to the next one. And the next one is coming from Pennsylvania. Has to do with orbs, lights, and mists. It says, I've been experiencing some paranormal phenomena since I was a child, approximately the age of 5. My first experience was being physically weighed down by an unseen force. I was paralyzed. I couldn't speak, let alone scream for help, and I had trouble breathing. I could feel my body sinking deeper into my bed as if I had a ton of hands pushing down on me. I'll never forget it. This has happened to me several more times throughout my years. I'm terrified of the dark. I see full body apparitions with no true features. Instead, I see an outline of a figure from my peripheral vision and directly in front of me, and the figures vary in shades of white, gray, and black. And I see the figures much more clearly in the dark than in light, which explains why I do not sleep in the dark ever. I'm 24 years old. Figures are not the only ones I see. I see, I guess, what some people call mists flying about. I've seen balls of light dash through a room. One night I experienced something that I have no explanation of what it was. It was like a shower of orbs throughout the room I was in. It was late, about 2 a.m, and I was working in a college paper when all of a sudden I was surrounded by orbs that were constantly changing colors. And it reminded me of the reflection of colors you see on a bubble or an oil, but instead of reflections, it was lights. And it lasted maybe a minute or two, but I was left in awe. That was one of the most beautiful and unexplainable things I have ever experienced. Other times I'm awakened with the sensation that somebody is watching me, and I'll see a figure staring at me as I lay in bed. One time I had woken to find a black shadowed face directly in mine. I was so shocked that I froze in bed and the figure was bent over, staring into my face as I slept. That's creepy. When I woke up, it straightened up into a standing position and walked backwards into my closet. Well, I was 16 or 17 at this time, and that was the last time I slept in the dark. I've become somewhat more of an insomniac. I work graveyard shift to help escape these nights, and the nights that I don't work, I find myself struggling to sleep because I fear what may happen. I'm constantly being paralyzed by some unseen force. Unfortunately, one time when I was away in college, I felt as if it was trying to have some kind of intercourse with me, but I was able to fight off the paralysis and keep my legs together, and I don't understand what that is. That state of paralysis. What is going on? Why do we get paralyzed? When I get paralyzed, I feel as if I'm trapped within a whirlwind, like a hurricane. Other times I have felt myself falling asleep, yet I was awake. For instance, one time, I was constantly seeing a white figure day and night trying to get my attention, and I would watch TV and it would walk back and forth in front of the TV in order to get my attention. After a few days, I finally got fed up because I hadn't slept and told that if it had something to say, just say it. And I fell into a sort of trance. I was half asleep, half awake. I was well aware of my surroundings because my father had just woken up 5 a.m. and was making coffee in the kitchen as I lay on the living room couch approximately 20 to 25 feet away. I wasn't scared. It was not like the paralysis and a woman spoke to me, and I responded several times. I could literally hear myself speaking and feel myself moving my mouth, but my body was limp. When I came to from that state, I'd forgotten most of the things she had told me, but only remembered a line that I was supposed to tell my father. Other times it's not so pleasant. I've had someone call my name and it would imitate my family member's voice and even members that are not there at the time it occurs, as if to tease me when I'm finally falling asleep. Other times I'd feel a woman brush my arm, whisper, shh, shh, as if to help me sleep. Lately, I'm experiencing many shadows, not only from home, but also at work and other people's houses. I see these beams of light coming from above and shooting down. I fall asleep and I feel myself battling with something to escape the paralysis event, or even at times, it feels as if I'm leaving my body as I'm slowly hovering out of my body. I don't like that. It scares me. And sometimes it takes a good fight to come out of it. Now, my daughter has recently told me 2 days ago that she saw a shadow in the corner of her own room and it had big ears. And she said it really scared her, and she went to my mom's room for comfort. Then yesterday, my mother was woken by a gentle tapping on her shoulder. Her first thought was that one of my children had woken up, but there was no one there. I guess I'm looking for help to try to find a way to control what comes in or out, because when I first moved into this home, I sensed an older woman's presence, but I did not fear it, and I was completely comfortable with the presence. Now I feel like I've attracted some things, and they've followed me home. I fear for my children. One thing that constantly pops into my mind is what if I'm doing it to myself? I've heard that poltergeists can do that. I'm clueless on things like that, and I don't know what to do. I feel as if I have no control over my abilities, if there are any, and I don't even know what my abilities would be. I have premonitions through dreams, which doesn't happen as often because I'm very restless and I live in fear. Yeah, that's no way to live. That's a tough place to be. And ladies and gentlemen, let me just let you all know that if you're dealing with something horribly paranormal and you're trying to get some grasp of it or understanding, please let me know. We do have people associated with the show that are willing to help. They don't charge. They do take tips if you feel like doing that, but they just want to help. They just want to be there for you. So they don't even need to come to your house. They can do what they do remotely. But, you're not alone. These things are tough enough, and many people have asked for help, and many people have gotten help. And I've heard back from those very people that the help was wonderful and it really brought them to a good place. So these are not just people, these are not just pretenders. These are really talented people that are helping and doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. So please keep that in mind. If you are or you know someone who is dealing with something dark and scary, let us know, because we will be happy to help. And if you just want to talk, about what you're experiencing, let me know. I'm happy to listen and give you my advice. But if you need help, there's that as well. I'm extraordinarily proud of that too, because there's lots of shows out there that are doing the subject matter, but there's not lots of shows that are doing the subject matter and offering to help as well. So as far as I know, that's unique to us, but I'm not positive. There could be other shows out there that do the same thing. But in any case, I hope there are, because there's a lot of people, I'm sure, living in fear. So I'm just glad we're one of them, if there are more. Excuse me. All right, so this is coming from North Carolina and has to do with pets and animals. This is really short, and it happened just before the holiday season of 2008. Some background: our youngest son has a thing for dogs. My husband and I prefer cats, but our son, who is not a little kid, but rather a serious failure... What? Not a little kid, but rather a serious failure to launch. What the hell does that mean? Our son, who is not a little kid, but rather a serious failure to launch. I don't even know what that means, but that's not a good way to talk about your kid. Has an uncomfortable habit of bringing dogs into our home and expecting everyone else to train them. I can't begin to count how many times this has happened, but the most recent one is what I'm writing about. Now, to his credit, this young man has a compassionate streak, and he brought the dog here because he was just a little pup who was constantly being done out of his food by the bigger dogs where he lived. Long and not particular germane story there. Unfortunately, the little houndling got sick and died after a few weeks. The weird thing is what happened in that afternoon. After the little one had been laid to rest in the backyard, I was sitting in the dining area, which gives a clear view to the bedrooms and second bathroom on that side of the house, and I looked up. I could have sworn I saw the dead puppy going into my son's bedroom. He was little and brown and a tail wagger, and I'm pretty sure I'd recognize him anywhere. That's the one and only time I've ever seen anything like this. I wonder if he just wanted to come back for a final head scratch, or have I finally gone over the edge? You might be over the edge. Not sure. A failure to launch. That just... I understand being a frustrated parent. Kids can bring out the frustration in us like nobody's business, but I don't think you ever refer to your child as a failure to launch. What the hell does that mean? I don't know. Just some strangeness in the world, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so let's continue here. We'll pull up some more. Let's see. Okay, I got a few more opened up here. And this first one is coming from New York. Forget about it. And it has to do with apparitions, voices, and touches. And it's kind of a medium-length story, not too horrible. Failure to Launch was a movie. Oh, okay. Thank you, Gemini. I don't know what the context of that is, but at least maybe that may... That's what I was thinking, Brett Munson says that the kid is an adult who doesn't want to leave his parents' home. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. But if it's just a movie reference, unless it's a movie reference that means that, then that's still not sure. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Ethan. But still, do you publicly humiliate your child? Even though these stories are written anonymously, it's still like, wow, that's some love right there. All right, so this has to do with apparitions, voices, and touches. This is about my mom when she was around the age of about 8 or so. She lived up in New York in Rockland County in a very old house at the time. If you're ever to ask any of her family members, they'd all tell you that it was definitely haunted, with more than one ghost. There were 3 or 4 of them, she said, since it was years ago, but she can't remember the exact amount, not remount. Sorry. Sadly, not all of them were friendly. During any time of the day, whether it is during the morning, evening, or night, she was afraid to go down into the basement. Sure, some basements are scary, but this was different. She learned to iron clothes at a very young age, and she would iron the clothes down in the basement. And one day when she went down there to iron, and she heard 2 men talking. She couldn't hear exactly what they were saying since they were whispering, but she could tell it was 2 men. All of a sudden, it felt cold, and she knew then that these men were ghosts. It doesn't get cold during the summer, even if you are underground. And she freaked and ran up the stairs. And she got up the stairs, and the door slammed shut right behind her without her even touching it. After that, she never went down in the basement again. And that night, she went upstairs to change into her pajamas, and she was home alone once again, since everyone went out, and suddenly she heard chairs moving across the floor in the kitchen. Well, she got curious and went downstairs to see if someone had come home early. And when she walked into the kitchen, everything was the same way as it had been, besides one of the chairs. It had been at the table, but somehow it had ended up 5 feet away from it. She didn't pay any mind to it and thought it was just her imagination, so she moved it back to the table and went back upstairs. And once she arrived in her room, she heard it again and figured that it definitely wasn't her imagination this time. She went down to the kitchen again and found the same chair away from the table by 5 feet again. And she automatically thought back to the voices she had heard down in the basement and freaked out again. Well, she ran upstairs to her bedroom, and like any 8-year-old, she hid under her blanket thinking it would go away after a while. Well, she fell asleep, and while waiting for someone to come home, and that's how her mom found her. Her mother had been scared since she was gasping for air in her sleep from lack of oxygen. This is all my mother could remember from that experience, but she's had many more, some not very pleasant. Since not all ghosts were very friendly, and found out a few years later there was a demon after her. But that's another story for another time. Wow. Well, that's plenty creepy. I mean, that really is. I don't know how you found out if a demon is after you. I guess there is another story, but I guess we'll run into it eventually. It is tagged onto this story, but on the very end. But I don't know. I don't want to get into really dark things tonight. This one is from Pennsylvania, and it has to do with haunted places. And this is actually 3 stories in one. The first one happened to my mom just recently, just a few weeks ago. My mom stays at home with my son, who's an infant, while I'm at work, and my brother is currently home for college break. But he works all the time, as does my dad, so most days she's home alone for about 5 to 6 hours. One day while I was at work, I called her and told her I wasn't feeling well and that my brother was going to pick me up on his way home from the mall. She had fallen asleep with my son, and suddenly she woke up to hear what sounded like a woman crying. Since I told her I wasn't feeling well, she assumed it was me. She called my name, but there was no answer, as I was still at work, but she did not know it at the time. She was concerned, so she got up and looked in the bathroom and my bedroom, but she could find no explanation for the noise. It says nose, but I think she means noise, or he, because there was no TV on or radios on in the house. I guess it would have to be a she if she thought a crying woman was the person who's writing the story. I'm not sure if this could be a coincidence, but a few days later, her aunt went to the hospital because she was having heart problems. Could it have been her crying? Maybe a premonition of what was to come? My second story also happened to my mom while she was been home alone, and more than once, my grandma's house is right behind us, and she has a tendency to come over unannounced, so when the back door opens and closes, which is in our kitchen, my mom assumes it's my grandma coming, and she yells her name and says hello, but never get a response. She has gotten up to look a few times, and no one is ever there. She'll call my grandma and ask her if she had come over, but she always says no. The third story happened about 3 weeks ago. My dad was cleaning out our couch, And he found a photo of him and his mom, which has since passed away about 4 or 5 years ago, taken when he was a little baby. The picture is fairly old considering he was born in 1955. That might not sound strange, but the last time he saw this picture was years ago in the back room upstairs. Our back room is full of junk, and you'd have to go through many boxes to find old pictures that have been stored up there, especially a specific one like this. Also, my dad has cleaned out the couch many times too since the holidays were coming and such. Now, we do believe there is at least one ghost in our house, possibly my mom's grandma, since she lived in the house her whole life. So our house is very old, if not more, and I've never felt any negative feelings, but when things happen, it always gives me the creeps. I told another story of its presence in my story, My Rings, and as far as I know, nobody in my family has seen anything, but we all have had strange occurrences that are just too much to be mere coincidence. My son, who is 7 months old, does seem to stare up at the corner of the ceilings a lot, and something that no one else can see, and smile and giggles, as do our 5 cats. Your 5 cats smile and giggle? No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, it was easy. Low-hanging fruit. My dog doesn't seem to notice anything, which makes me believe he doesn't feel threatened in any way of whatever's in our house. Maybe they can see what's in our house. I hope you enjoyed the stories. If you'd like to hear more, let me know. We always like to hear more stories. We love stories. This one's a little longer, and this is from Utah. Or Utah. It might be Utah. I don't know. Let's see. It says, this is my dad's story. When he told it to me Christmas Eve, yeah, my weird family shares ghost stories on all major holidays. And it's never planned, just sort of happens. Well, this story took place in Nephi Canyon, Nephi Canyon, and is actually 2 separate experiences. One morning while driving through the canyon on his way to Fountain Green, my dad, who is of sound mind and doesn't use any sort of psychiatric medications or any drugs that would cause him to hallucinate, just had to get that out of the way, saw a group of 3 Native American warriors on horseback riding a few miles up the mountain away from the road. He said to him it looked like they were out looking for something, maybe on a hunting trip, and they were armed with bows and arrows, and I think it might have even be a residual haunting since my dad said they didn't seem to notice his loud truck driving by or him slowing down to stare at them. He said he watched them for about 2 minutes and then they were gone. That area is famous for having the Mountain Meadow Massacre happen there, and you should Google it. Google that for the specifics, but as far as I can remember from school, it's where a group of Mormon pioneers savagely attacked a group of immigrants on their way to California, thinking they were the U.S. Army coming to ruin them as a people. Anyway, a lot of deaths happened there as well as the murdering of the Native Americans that used to live there. I thought that at one time I read an experience from somewhere else on here that has seen the Native Americans in Nephi Canyon. Me and my dad would be very interested to hear from them or from someone else with a similar experience. The second and most bizarre experience happened to him a few days before Christmas. My father and step-grandpa, his father-in-law, were driving home through the canyon when my dad noticed a huge, dark, see-through shadow that was bigger than the Durango he was driving pass across the road through their car, actually pushing the car over across the road to the right as it was passing through. Well, after the entity had passed through them, my grandpa said, "Whew, that was close. I thought we were going to go off the road." In his head, my dad was thinking, "Oh, good, he saw it as well. I'm not crazy." But then my grandpa said, "It's weird, though. There's no ice, and it didn't feel like we were sliding. It felt like the car was being pushed." My dad said, "Didn't you see that huge black thing pass through our car?" My grandfather said, "No, he didn't. But the way the car moved was very odd." I'd love to be able to give my dad some clue as to what might have been. Please only post helpful comments. That's funny because that reminds me of the story from the caller last night that talked about passing by these balls of mist and having a huge dent placed in the top of the car. Now, this is a huge shadow that actually pushed the car. So Very strange, ladies and gentlemen. I can't help it. I keep thinking of Sasquatch, and I keep thinking of this idea that they phase in and out. And so could they move as large balls of mist or large shadows if they indeed can do this? And it's not up to me to decide whether they can or can't. I just have to have an open mind because this is the paranormal. I mean, everything is possible. But if they can, would they be like, what, oh God, darn cars, let's just push this? I mean, certainly they would have the strength to do it. And, that's what I think about. It's like, well, what is big and has a lot of strength and is believed to be interdimensional by very many people? Well, Sasquatch. And it is Utah, for God's sakes. Utah is, of course, a hot spot for a lot of different experiences with Bigfoot and Sasquatch and such. So could it be that these people are experiencing them in that, I don't know, the mid transition phase or whatever, or the, I don't know. I don't know what to call it, but I know you know what I mean. Oh, the minion talks so loud. It's a positive place. The Paranormal Portal is a positive place. Thank you, Aussie. I try, man. I try to keep it real positive because God knows in this world today, we need all the positive we can get. It's also a dry place in the portal today. Hope you don't mind. I got to moisten the lips. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, on the 10th, Deborah Varner will be on the show with me to do readings. If you're looking for a free psychic reading, then the 10th, which is this coming Friday, will be your night. Same phone number, of course, so take note of that. But if you do call in, just be patient. The queue really fills up, and it does take some time to get through it. There's no specific length of time a reading will take. But we do try to get through them as quickly as we can. So just be patient, but you may be on hold a while. But we'll get to you eventually, I promise. So let's go to the next story. Yeah, we're doing good. We're already at about 40 minutes into this. God, it's gone fast. This one is coming out of Minnesota, my old stomping grounds. Duke and I both are transplants from Minnesota. We've been transplanted out here to the west. We're way late for the gold rush, though, as it turned out. Didn't know that. I missed that memo. But let's see what's going on in Minnesota. It has to do with a haunted life. After I posted signs and weird symptoms yesterday, I went to lie down on my couch. As I was lying there and watching TV, my husband texted me and asked me if I was okay. I told him I was fine, but I wasn't comfortable in the bedroom, so as soon as I hit send on my phone, the couch started shaking around. I wasn't so freaked out about it, but it did make me uneasy. Yeah, I think that would make me uneasy too. Today I had my sister over so that I wasn't alone, and we were in the living room watching TV and talking when we heard a rustling of a plastic bag in the kitchen right next to us. At first I thought it was my little kitten Drew, and I looked around for him and found that he was sleeping on a blanket in the hallway. He was on the other side of the living room, not even close to the kitchen. Shortly after that happened, me and Becky, my sister, were talking about how weird that was and how uneasy it made her feel. I told her that stuff like that happened all of the time, but mostly when I was home alone. As soon as I said that, an object from inside my room flew and hit the door that was closed. I was so surprised by this that I refused to go in and look to see what was thrown. It made me think of last night when I was taking a bath to relax. I was in the tub talking with my husband about what had been happening lately when from the closet on the other side of one of the bathroom doors came the sound of a music box. The music box sounded like the kind with the ballerina inside that dance when you open it. And Michael, my husband, asked me what was wrong, and I told him what I heard. And the funny thing is that I do not own a music box. After remembering that and how things were starting to happen more and more, Becky and I left, and we waited for Michael to get off of work before doing anything about what was going on. Michael wants me to do some EVPs in the closet, but I'm too uneasy to try that until I know what the outcome will be if I do. Well, how do you know what the outcome's going to be when you do it if you don't do it? Now, I'm just waiting to see what else happens until I know enough to hopefully do a total cleanse of our home. I've been looking a lot online and taking a lot of advice from readers on how to deal with everything and what I am dealing with. If you know anything, please let me know. Well, that's creepy stuff. I don't know. I mean, you don't even know what's there. Whatever's there, though, is obviously wanting to be noticed. It sounds like it has quite a bit of energy, too, if it can rattle around a couch. That's no small feat. So I don't know what the hell's going on. But I don't know if there's ever a good time. But I'd start with some sage and just try to knock that energy down a little bit before you do anything. But anyway, that's just me, folks. That's how I roll. Oh, that's funny. I love some of the spellings in these stories. I mean, they're spelled very phonetically. And so it just kind of cracks me up. All right, I'll pull open a few more here. I think that's 2. I'll open up a third one because I'm not sure how long these are, but this one's very short. This one's actually titled An Echoey Voice. But they spelled echoey, ECHOY. And I'm not making fun of somebody, but it's just kind of cracks me up. Sorry. Maybe it's right. I don't know. Maybe that's the right way to spell it. I'm just thinking, how would I spell it? And I think I'd put an E in there somewhere. Echo E. But maybe it's just missing an E. And if that case, I don't know. It just looks funny. This one's coming from Wisconsin, and it is, my family and I moved to a new house, and we stayed in the living room because it was hot upstairs. We slept in the living room for 2 nights, and we hadn't dragged up the mattresses to the second floor, and we needed to stay cool. I and my family slept, but not well. My mom asked me in the morning if I heard anything, and I said no, and she told me that she'd heard a voice, and it sounded like it was an echo or in a tunnel. My mom said it sounded like a girl or a young woman, and it was coming from the basement door area. She says that it clearly said, "Mom, Mom," like she was looking for someone. Oh, that's horrible. My dad and mom heard it the second night and the same thing. I and my family do believe that it was a girl that was murdered somewhere else. The family of the girl did move into the house we live in now, but then moved out after. We feel like we're being watched, followed, etc. My dad once heard what sounded like typing, heard what sounded like a pile of papers fall, but nothing fell. And once my mom left a half cup of orange juice out and woke up in the middle of the night to find that it was gone. She asked if someone drank it, and we said no. My sister and I think that the girl spirit tries to get attention from my parents because she wasn't able to say goodbye to her own when she died. We think that she is very nice, and we hope that she will stay here as long as she doesn't scare us. That's, if it is really a little girl ghost, you got to help her pass. You got to help her cross. If it is a little child, those children don't need to be stuck in this world. They should be in the next world. And hopefully with the people of her family, whether it's her parents or grandparents or whatever. But, I think if you have, there's 2 parts of this. First of all, I'm very skeptical of children ghosts anyway, because I think that dark things like to pretend they're kids just to lower your defenses. But if it is indeed a kid, either way, I think you got to work to get rid of it, because if it is a kid, it deserves to be on the other side, and you need to help it transition. If it's not a kid, you don't want it in your house anyway, because it's obviously trying to attach itself or worse. So you got to get rid of those things, in my opinion. But to each their own. People do what they want to do, but that's pretty creepy. All right, the next one is coming from California, and this one's not too long either. It says, I'm not a guy that's easily fooled into things or by things. I look at things in a logical sense and often try to debunk them. For the past 18 months, I've been having these weird dreams in which I find myself just standing in a place that I have never been or seen before, staring at people doing whatever they are doing. At any rate, whilst I'm an experiencing this, I can't move or do anything but just stare. Then I wake up a couple seconds or minutes later. When I'm at school or at home, I'd be sitting down, standing up, or doing something else, when at that point I would realize that the place I'm sitting or standing in is exactly what I dreamt about. Everything is exactly the way I saw it in my dream. I don't even know how to explain it. The surrounding environment I was in is exactly replicated in my dreams. Very odd for some other scenarios. I actually avoid doing something knowing what the consequences are going to be, or how do I know, you may ask? Well, when things become vivid and clear and start happening in sequences, I start putting pieces together and remember what happens next. Though not really helpful if it doesn't happen soon after. Before I go to sleep, maybe even before I have these dreams, a voice in my head that sounds distinctly like mine says things like, "Sell your soul to the demon." Or at times it mixes and matches the wording to "give your soul to the demon," or whatever relates to those two statements. Well, I just brush it off, my shoulders saying something like, "Dude, shut your mouth," or "get the bleep out of here." And then the voice would stop. A couple of nights later, the voice comes back. I have no idea what it is or why it says these particular statements to me. It's not really scaring me, but it rather gives me a discomforting notion. If you must know, both my troubles are tied together. Hopefully someone can give me some insight as to what is happening or going on with me. Thanks in advance. Well, it sounds like you need some help. If it's psychological, you need some help. And if it is truly premonitions and you're having this weird voice, then you need some help. So that's a tough one, though, because I think depending on the kind of help you get, you could be on medication and that may not be your problem at all. So I'd go for the spiritual help first. And if that doesn't work, then seek out other kind of help. But that's really spooky stuff, really spooky stuff. I think about that oftentimes. How many people are in asylums that are just sensitive and picking up voices and hearing things? How many asylums are full of sensitives or psychics that are being medicated into a stupor because our medical profession doesn't recognize this kind of stuff? Even though it's been a part of our cultures for thousands of years, our current, medical structure is not taking these kind of things into account. So, unfortunately, I think there's quite a few people that are dealing with a lot of emotions that aren't their own, and empaths that deal with, and I can't say this exclusively, but I think that some people are just empathic, and they suffer from depression but the problem is it really isn't their depression that they're picking up. And so they're suffering from these bouts of depression. And then they, of course, people go to get help. They go to the doctors to deal with this stuff. And so they get medicated. And unfortunately, the problem was never theirs. They just never were aware or made aware of the fact that they might be an empath. And that really breaks my heart because, that's like paying twice for something you had nothing to do with. First of all, you had no reason to actually feel depressed because there's nothing depressing in your world. And second of all, you're feeling someone else's emotions and then you get stuck with the medication for it. And what a horrible thing that is. And I don't know why I bring that up, but it does occur to me that, our modern society doesn't recognize this kind of stuff enough. I think in some ways it's getting better, but we still got a long way to go. And there's still a lot of people that are suffering needlessly just because we don't have very many tools in our modern world to help people with this. And, there's a lot of people attacking those that do. So what do? It's a conundrum of sorts, I guess. But I hope this person's okay. This one is coming from Wisconsin, and it has to do with haunted places. This is probably... this will probably be the last one of the night, but it's a long one, so hang in there. This story is how I got my name. And it's written by a person named Night Ghost. I wanted to start with my experiences backwards because going back would be like walking through history, which I love, not to be confusing. I try keeping things interesting, so I will start off with I love, and I will start off with I love. I don't know what that means. And I'm fascinated with old houses. Okay, now it makes sense. Sorry. Especially elegant, grand Victorian beauties. Me too. I love those old houses. Used to own one. This house that I'm about to share isn't exactly elegant by any means, but back in its day it was Victorian just the same. Eau Claire, Wisconsin, originally a lumbering town. I've researched the history and I lived there all my life, so downtown by the two rivers that meet, the Chippewa and the Eau Claire rivers, there are magnificent homes of its heyday. Plenty of houses I can list by the last name just by driving by them. And so this is going on referring to their home as the original owners in the late 1800s. It's exciting to me. Well, this house that I'm about to tell you about isn't famous by any means, so I'm sure the incident that took place was due by the people inhabiting the old house. On Chippewa Street, the houses are getting shabbier away from further up the river where men and money lived. Chippewa Street is next to Water Street, which is a college area. Mostly bars and drunken activities occur. Nothing abnormal for a college town. Well, this night, two of my friends and I were at a bar, and my guy friend had keys to his friend's apartments. She left for Vegas and wanted him to watch her fish until she returned. My other friend was ditched by our other friend, so she ended up with me and that friend, and well, we all decided to go stay at the girl's house while she was out of town that night. She wasn't far from the bar, so it made it that much more convenient. A day earlier, I had first visited her apartment. The only vibe I got off her shack was it was an old house and there was a lot of pot smokers that didn't believe in anything but smoke. So this night would prove to be somewhat unsettling. We arrived around bar close, and my girlfriend plopped down in a comfy recliner, and I lay down in a layout bed next to the TV and flipped through the channels. It was nice being somewhere with cable again. My guy friend took the floor and didn't want to sleep in his friend's bed in the other room by himself, so there we all were until, and not much later, we all passed out being super tired. It wasn't much later that something began to tug at me. I assumed it was my guy friend rolling around and flopping his arms at me. I was so tired I ignored it, but it seemed to be like some sort of noise that was erupting from our slumbers. Take note that I'm a light sleeper and everything wakes me up. And this night, however, I was so tired that no matter what this thing was, it kept trying to wake me up. And it felt like something was pulling at my body or the covers off of me. And I literally felt something there, and when I looked, there was nothing there. Not even my guy friend who had passed out in the middle of the floor. I once again ignored it and fell back asleep, but not long after, the same thing was tugging at me, and this time it woke me up where I looked around the room to exactly what could be trying to keep me awake. I glanced around, and this is what caught my attention. There was a light behind my girl's chair that illuminated and reflected on the wall, in a beam of green lights that danced on the wall. It seemed to come from behind the chairs that she was sleeping on. She was passed out cold, and I looked harder and rubbed my eyes to make sure I wasn't dreaming, but I knew it was there, because whatever it was woke me to show me. I said out loud, "What the hell is that?" This is too much for me. I closed my eyes and said to myself, not that anyone human was listening to me anyway, that I'm too tired to deal with this BS, and after that, nothing woke me again until morning when we rehearsed stories. She swore she was out cold all night long, and she was. He stirred somewhat, saying that some noise kept waking him, but he couldn't distinguish what it was. I told them about the tugging sensation and the green light, and we were all baffled, so I made him call his friend and asked her if her apartment was weird. Well, she confirmed that it was okay and that that he was on drugs or something. Yeah, okay, she's the one who smokes, not us. Then I told him to ask her if her grandma was there for a visit or what the deal was, and that's when she freaked out. Because the first day we visited, she said her grandma looks out for her and her cuckoo clock stopped when her grandma died. Hey, I thought that was an innocent question. I believe she raced home from Vegas after that, but we booked out the next day and have not been back. I strongly got the feeling that whatever she was into, being atheist, wasn't good and left some unpleasant spirits around. It probably wasn't her grandma, but I threw it out there for possibilities, and after she got back from Vegas, she demanded her key back and none of us heard from her again. Thank God. Side note, maybe the ghost doesn't like her. Who knows? True that. That's true. But speaking of I hope you guys liked this episode of the Paranormal Portal Night Terrors. I liked doing it for you. I hope you've been wildly entertained throughout this venture tonight. I really appreciate you guys coming in. New podcast coming out tomorrow. Again, this will be the interview with Eric Mentel and Bill Burns. It was a great conversation. It's full of great information. If you're into the UFO phenomena, you're especially going to love this episode. And I'm here to tell you, it was it was intense. It was intense. Bill is no joke, man. That guy has some information. It's incredible. I've seen him on the Ancient Aliens for years, and UFO hunters before that and during that. But talking to him in person was just like, it was like being run over by a steamroller. It was just like, wow, I just wasn't prepared. I really wasn't. He's just one of those really intense, knowledgeable guys. So I hope you guys will check it out. That'll be released sometime after midnight tonight. We'll get it up and ready to go. So hope you guys will check it out. But I'll be back tomorrow night with more of the Night Terrors, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, thank you for being here with me. Continue to spread the word to those you know who love the paranormal. I would really appreciate it to continue to make this grow and grow. But I'll be back tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, with another episode of the Night Terrors, just like tonight, but with different stories, of course. So I hope you'll join me. Love you all. Be good, be kind, and be nice. Be nice to each other. Help each other out, and all the rest of it, right? Remember the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. Something like that, the usual ending. So anyway, guys, love you guys, and have a great night. I'll be back, and if you have a bunch of stories of your very own, I'd love to be a guest on our podcast. Get a hold of me. Email me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. All right, guys, love you, and sweet dreams.